Hi everyone, and welcome to what's going to be my last video of 2019. Unexpected one this, because I thought I was done with my last collection update, but I've seen quite a few people doing their best and worst of lists, so I thought I'd jump on that bandwagon well, it's not actually an objective best and worst of list, it's more of a subjective favourites and most disappointing of the year. Bit of a departure this video, obviously, as you can see. I've actually shown myself on camera for the first time, so apologies for that. Yeah, I just wanted to do a quick intro and wish everyone, or hope everyone's had a good Christmas and wish everyone a happy new year. Thanks for looking at the channel in 2019, and it's appreciated, all the new subscribers I've had for what is very much a hobby of mine. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the content and you'll come back in 2020 for some more. Now, just a couple of things about the list. I have only included things that I physically received between January of this year and December, which rules out things like MP09's reissue and Fans Toys Hydra, which came just at the tail end of last year. Yeah, I thought that was probably the best way of doing it. I've also try to include as many new molds as I can, but it's been difficult because this has mainly been a year of me buying either reissues or repaints. Haven't been that many new molds that I've been terribly interested in. I think some of the decisions I've made or some of the choices I've made will probably raise one or two eyebrows, but I'd enjoy hearing your feedback in the comments section. Obviously, as I said, this is my subjective opinion. I'm sure you'll have yours, so if we could keep it civil, that would be wonderful. But I do enjoy reading people's thoughts. So yeah, please post a comment, let me know what you think and what yours are. And anyway, yeah, without further ado, let's get on with the video. So my first pick for most disappointing figures of the year, because that seemed like the best place to start, was this fella here, which I'm sure many of you will recognise as X-Transbot's Boost. Now, I know this figure originally came out years ago, but this version of the figure was new in 2019. And this is the so-called Commitoon version of the figure. Now, it's currently the only third-party Masterpiece scaled version of Windcharger available, so it kind of wins by default. And this is arguably the best version of the figure, but it's still kind of disappointing. I originally owned the Toon version. It's very confusing, this figure, because you had a toy version and a Toon version. Now, the toy version had more of a light grey chest and silver legs, and the Toon version had white legs with kind of more of an indigo chest, so neither were actually Toon or toy accurate. Then this came along out of nowhere, really, which it's got it's more cartoon accurate grey chest, but it has sort of silver legs, so I don't know, I'd have preferred a more of a matte colour for the legs and face, but what are you going to do? It's still the best version, as I've said, but it has well documented problems with the feet. They look pretty unsightly. It doesn't look too bad from the front, apart from the screw holes in the arms, but the actual face sculpt's not terrible, and it's okay from some angles, but it's got a bit of a pain in the arse transformation because of the way the feet move, and tabbing in the chest is also a real pain. It just needs someone to take another run at the figure. It needs a new mould, an updated mould that's much more Toon accurate, both in design and colour, and doesn't have a torturous transformation. So, not a terrible figure, not a great one, but not a terrible one. But certainly a disappointment for me, all told, but not a disaster. And I'm happy that I've actually got the best available version of it. But anyway, that's my fifth most disappointing figure of the year. So let's move on to number 4. So anyway, here we go. At number 4, we have a relatively recent release, and that is Fans Toys Jabba, their take on Blur. Now, I did a recent video for this one, so I won't go into too much detail, but the main reason that this is on the disappointing list is because of the sort of bait and switch colour scheme that they pulled. It looks fairly blue, sky blue with a metallic blue under this fluorescent light from the camera, but looking at it in person it's definitely more purple leaning. It's just annoying. It doesn't look terrible, so that's why it's not a terrible figure. And I still really like the silhouette, and the mould in general looks quite nice. It's quite true to the tune, but I certainly more so than Buzzing. But I just can't help but be disappointed with the colour that they went for. And also I know that a lot of people have had breakage issues, so whether it's stressing or outright breaks on parts of the figure when transforming because of the way they've integrated die cast around some very fragile plastic hinges. I haven't transformed mine for that reason. I got part way through the transformation and things felt like they were going to break, so I stopped. This vehicle mode's not really worth the effort to break the figure as far as I'm concerned, or not the reward. I like the bot mode. It's a nice version of the figure aesthetically in everything but the colour choices that they went for. Again, purely subjective, but I don't think I'm in the minority with this one. I've gone back and checked Transformers the movie and other things, and in some scenes he did appear a little bit more purple than the sort of royal blue that we're used to, but by and large this is not the colour that he was. So yeah, that's why he makes the list at number 4. Not because it's a terrible figure, but just because it is a disappointment when I was looking forward to it so much. Anyway, let's take a look at number 3. Well, we didn't have to go too far for number 3, at least not physically. It was standing right next to Jabba. This is obviously Fans Toys Hoodlum, but this originally came out back in January of 2019. And yeah, I had a whole host of issues with this one. I mean, it's a very old mould that I didn't see a lot of update between when it was originally designed and announced and then its eventual release. Overall, I think I prefer it to Takara's, but only really because it's more in scale. Other than that, I really don't like several things about it. I don't like the giant forearms with the tiny fists. I hate the collar, the way it breaks up here. I think that looks awful. Not a big fan of these purple bits on the intakes. Really don't like that it can't look up, which is stupid when you consider it's got the visor gimmick, which is from the scene in the movie when he does look up. I don't really like it from the back. It hasn't got the correct detailing on the back thing. It's quite hollow looking as well. The heel spurs are unsightly. I've even had to mistransform mine because out of the box the stock transformation has the shoulder sitting way too high. So I've mistransformed mine. The whole thing doesn't really peg together very well, as you can see. Even when it, I haven't got it pegged together because of the shoulders, but even when it is, it doesn't sit together very well. But the main reason is because of the QC. Again, like Jabba, this one was coming with major issues, or for a lot of people. In fact, this one was worse because people were having paint chip issues out of the box where the painted die cast had been rubbing against another piece of painted die cast, maybe because it hadn't cured properly, who knows. But in any reason, whatever it was, for whatever reason, it was chipping, and yeah, people had bits of paint missing from the hood of their alt mode, which is really, really bad. Fans Toys solution to this seemed to be to offer people pots of paint to paint their figures, which is just, boggles the mind. It's a terrible solution. But yeah, anyway, I was really disappointed with this figure. I'd ordered it by the time reviews started coming in, and yeah, I don't know. Thing is, no one's managed to nail this guy or even get it like pretty good. There aren't a lot of good options. Takara's has got its own issues. Not least the scale. So yeah, I mean, one day maybe someone will get the character right, get the colour right as well, but until then we're stuck with what we've got. So yeah, that's why it made the number 3 spot on the list, and yeah, fingers crossed for a better version one day. Anyway, let's move on to number 2. And here we are back with another recently reviewed figure. Probably won't come as a surprise to some of you given my comments, but yeah, MP45 BV2, big disappointment. I mean, I kind of knew it was going to be a big disappointment ahead of time. It's, you know, there are various reasons why these figures have made it onto the list. This one's here because while it looks nice enough from the front, like this, dead on, it does look quite toon accurate. I have some major issues with it in other areas. So QC again is a problem. I have a damaged headlight on the front of mine, and the paint is a bit spotty in places, especially on the faces. I really don't like how loose some joints are and overly tight other joints are. I, of course, hate the feet. There's no getting away from that. From dead on centre they look okay, but from the side, the back or whatever, they look awful. And the backpack, while not large, it's just, you know, you can see right through it. It's obviously just folded up car pieces. It's got a faux tyre on the back to try and make it look like the animation model, but in truth it looks nothing like it. It's also out of scale. It's too tall. It's half a head too tall for Takara's own scale chart, or own scale that's been established with MP21. So yeah, I mean, it was just a big disappointment in that respect, but mainly because, you know, all of this cost 90 quid, and it's just so overpriced for what it is. You know, I've got figures on my favourites list that are leader sized that didn't cost that, and this thing, you know, and they've got engineering that's probably just as complicated as this, but this is just not worth the money. Had I known about the KOs, I heard about those the day before my official arrived. Well, be they KOs or factory rejects, whatever. From what I've seen, they seem to be pretty much on a par quality-wise anyway. And they're about £60. That would have been a much more tolerable, palatable price point for this figure, £50 to £60. I'd have been reasonably happy with it at that price, but for £90, no, it's inexcusable and a sad indictment of the way the Masterpiece line is heading, I'm afraid. Not a terrible figure again. I don't hate it. I think it looks nice. I actually prefer aesthetically for my collection over MP21 because it is more toon accurate, and that's what I go for. But honestly, yeah, it was just disappointing, and that's why it's on the list. Anyway, without going on about it too much, because I did quite a lengthy review about it recently, let's move on to my number one disappointment for the year. And here we are with my number one disappointment, which probably comes as a surprise to no one who's looked at my channel over the year. It probably raises a few eyebrows, as I said, but remember, this isn't about the objectively worst or best figures. This is about what I've found to be the most disappointing and the most pleasurable this year. And while I like some elements of this figure, you know, looking at it from this pose, for example, it looks extremely toon accurate from this angle. It's got some really nice posability. All of that articulation comes at a cost, and that cost is some fairly big gaps. You know, you'll see there, around there, in the knees, especially on the backs of the legs, which you can't see at the moment. And a lot of panelling, which you can see, especially in alt mode, where the panelling and kibble on the back of the trailer, or sorry, the truck cab, the bed, are awful, just hideous. The transformation's also a bit of a nightmare. It's not fun in the slightest. You feel like you're going to break things. Which brings me on actually to one of my big niggles and the main reason this thing's made the list, and that is the QC. Now, again, price plays a factor in this. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. If this figure was £150 or £150 and it had some of the issues it's got, I'd be a lot more forgiving than I am at £330, which is what it cost me. Now, if you watch my video, you'll know that mine came with a few issues, sort of paint there and there, and around there, but the main one being this knee, which was broken out of the box. Now, the knee problems with this figure are well documented. People's were either broken out of the box or failing in short order because of the way the ratchets are designed. They're designed very badly. They don't even need to be designed the way they're designed. It's very strange how they've done it. But any figure that costs that amount of money and has that failure rate, especially to be broken out of the box, it's inexcusable. Takara must have known that these issues were present, and the fact that they stonewalled people who had the problem and put the onus on retailers to resolve it when they really don't have the operating budgets to do so, or in fact will even bother to do so because they're just like, well, it's Takara's problem. It was terrible. So really left a bad taste in my mouth because of what I paid for it. Really like tarnished the figure. I think a few months on, I'm looking at it and I like it a bit more, which is why I've moved it into this place in my display. But still, by and large, you know, it's a bit like my Omega Supreme, my Gabriel. I love the figure, but the fact that that broke within the first hour, and that was an expensive figure, albeit not as expensive as this, despite being at least 2.5 times the size. The fact that that broke within the first hour tarnished it, and I don't really like playing with it in case it breaks again. So this now falls into that camp of I'll pose it and leave it, and it'll look cool in this pose, but that's a hell of a lot of money to spend on something that I'm never going to touch for fear of breaking it. I could have bought a non-transformable action figure that would be more toon accurate actually for less. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, as I said, with B and this, and from what I've heard of Hound as well, it sounds like this is the direction that the line's going in. More expensive, but more fragile. It's really sad. I'm hoping that they turn it around because, you know, I can't see me supporting official figures for much longer if they keep producing things at this price point with this many issues. But that's not to say it's a bad figure. You know, there's a lot of accessories. As I said, it's got fantastic articulation. It does look really G1 accurate from this angle. It looks like crap from a lot of other angles, obviously. But from this angle, you know, you can get some really great G1 looking poses out of it. It can look amazing, especially because of the articulation. It allows for a lot of movement that you can't get with other figures. But you know, I don't want to give the impression that it's a terrible figure because it's not, but it is the most disappointing for me because it's the most expensive figure I've ever bought, and it's, you know, it was broken out of the box and had other issues. So that's why it makes number one list on this list. Sorry, I'm sure there will be plenty of you who disagree, but there you go. It's my list, and these are the rules that I've come up with. Anyway. That's everything for the most disappointing figures. Let's get on to the more positive side of the video now and look at the figures that have been my favourites in 2019. So here we are with the 5th choice pick for my favourites of the year. And I know I said I'd try and stick with original moulds, but I also mentioned how difficult that was because of what I've been buying this year. And as you'll see, here we have MP20 Plus Wheeljack, the toon or more toon accurate version of the character. This made the list because although I had the original deco, it was a KO, and in all honesty, I really like the sort of stripped back, bare, clean look of the toon. And this is a figure that I never had as a kid. Well, I tell a lie, I did have it eventually, but it was a Mexican import, and it was, don't know, it had a few issues, shall we say. But I always loved the character, and I really, you know, have a soft spot for him, which is why he made the list, really. It's a nice figure, you know, it's an older mould, but it still holds up well. I love the fully painted, the full paint job on it. I think it looks great. And honestly, that's why he made the list. I know it's not as exciting as some figures. You know, I did get MP17 Prowl with him, and while I also prefer that to the original deco, I don't know, it just didn't do, or didn't have the same effect as this version of the character did for me. So yeah, I'm not going to try and justify it too much. As I said, this is a very subjective list, and I can't quite put my finger on what I like so much about this, as it is quite plain, quite flat. But yeah, it just really appeals to me. And in robot mode, I think in alt mode, you know, I really like the original deco because it's a little bit more interesting visually. But for robot mode, this is really evocative of the toon, so that's why it gets my my number 5 spot. Okay, so let's move on and have a look at number 4 now. Well, here's number 4, and yes, it's another repaint, although I don't feel quite as guilty about including this one because, well, it has a few new gimmicks, shall we say. Obviously, it's a far more animation accurate deco, and I love the paint job on it. I think it looks really, really good. But I also really like the new face gimmick where you can swap out and put your own faces in, or I think you get a choice of 3. It's a lot more expressive. I love the new head sculpt. It's just probably my favourite Masterpiece Carbot now. I really, really do like the paint job on it. I think it looks great. As I mentioned, I also got MP17 Plus at the same time, which is perfectly fine. But quite similar to the original deco, whereas this one is just completely different, you know. I really, really liked the character of Blue Streak because it was the first Transformer that I ever owned way back in 1984. I still remember picking it up to this day. And unfortunately my original G1 figure is in 2 pieces now. Seen better days. But, you know, you get some other accessories with this. You get blast effects with it as well. And I just think it really, really looks great. As I say, it's been a tough list because I've picked up a lot of reissues and redecos, but the Plus line is something that I wasn't originally going to get into, and then I decided, you know, once I moved more towards the Toon style, I wanted to go full Toon. Never go full Toon, some people might say, but that's what I wanted to do. So I had to pick up the Plus line, and I'm kind of glad I did. I know it cost me additional money because I already owned all 3 of the Plus figures in my collection before. Which being Wheeljack, Prowl and Blue Streak, but I think these are much better suited to my aesthetic preferences, and yeah, as such, that's why he's made his way onto the list at number 4. Okay, let's take a look at my 3rd favourite figure of the year now. Okay, and in at number 3 we have Fans Toys Quietus, FT29, although I'm pulling a bit of a fast one here because this isn't actually the version that's made the list. This is the one I originally had, which is now in IDW mode, and looks pretty damn great, I have to say. But the version that I wanted to include on the list is actually FT29T, the Toon repaint. The reason being is that I just prefer the colours. Now, again, with most metallic blues and purples, they don't show up well on camera like this. The light is totally changing the way it looks, much like it did with Jabba on the other list. But you know, let me assure you that this is far more purple than blue, which the first one was, and that it has the pink hue to the face, hands, feet, sorry, not feet, legs and arms. And that's how I remember Cyclonus from the movie, and it's the deco I wanted, and it cost me, you know, another 150 quid or whatever it was, but it's the deco I eventually got. And I planned to sell the original to recoup the money, but I then fell in love with the IDW mode, so I ended up keeping it. And I think that one works with the slightly more metallic blue and the white body parts for that sort of samurai Cyclonus. But yeah, I really like this figure. I still love Elagos as a Cyclonus, but this one now has grown on me because it fits with the other Fans Toys figures in the collection better than Elagos does. As I said in my previous sort of collection video, once they release a Scourge, that will probably replace the Andras I have. But yeah, I don't know, I was initially disappointed with the figure because of the colour choices and some of the QC problems that it had. Those QC problems being sort of paint that's scratched because of some problems with the knees. The knees have little tabs on the back of them which would hit the chest during transformation and rub paint, and also a cockpit that wouldn't tab in. Now both of those things have been remedied with this T version, so I no longer have those bugbears. And yeah, that's why this repaint makes the list. Something that I was initially, it wouldn't have made my most disappointing figures of the year, but something I did have some slight reservations about, has been transformed, if you'll pardon the pun, into one of my favourite of the year. Okay, let's move on and take a look at my second favourite of the year. Okay, well, once again, we didn't have too far to go for that, did we? It's probably quite predictable given my recent video on this one, but yeah. Another reissue, or repaint. This is Fans Toys Sovereign, their M version, the movie version. And as I said in that the video review I did for the figure, this is the colour, the sort of deco that I never knew I needed until I saw it. And now, you know, I fell in love with it, and I honestly do think it elevates the figure to another level. I like the original colours. I do have the figure still, the original Sovereign, and it still looks great. And it's more of a Season 3 Galvatron, but this is definitely a movie Galvatron. Again, it's slightly more purple in person than it shows up on camera, but that again is probably more true to the animation than the flat out blue is. But that was what was great about the animation. It did look like it changed colour. The character looked like it changed colour according to the light, and that's what this figure does. I've always loved the mould. It's one of the first third-party figures I had, and it was a great one. It still is. It's not entirely toon accurate, I'm willing to concede that, but it's by far the best available Galvatron we've got at the moment, and this is easily my preferred version of the two. Now, I'm sure we'll get a better version of the character at some point, but until then, this fella will take pride of place in my display, and I think, you know, richly deserves his place at number 2 in my collection of favourite figures of 2019. Anyway, as I reviewed this one fairly recently, I won't procrastinate, I won't go on too much more. Let's move on to what is my number 1 favourite figure of 2019. And here we go. Again, may not come as a surprise to some of you if you've looked at my channel over the year, but my number 1 favourite figure of the year is Transform Elements TE01 OP Leader, their Optimus Prime. Now this is the version 3. I still have the version 1, it's on my desk at work, but I really like this figure. I think they've done a fantastic job with it. Now it's not quite as sculpted and rounded as MP44. It's a more boxy interpretation of Prime, but certainly incredibly evocative of the character in various forms, be they print, animation, toy, whatever. Its version 3 improvements are really great. I like the sort of frosted glass now, the blue glass. The fact they've made the original Season 1 head of darker grey faceplate to match the animation. The improvements they've made with ratchets and things like that to give it a little bit more articulation. It's obviously not as articulated as MP44, but it's not a million miles behind, and it is well, trying to do the math quickly, not quite a quarter of the price, but not far off a quarter of the price of MP44. Now I know it doesn't come with a trailer and all the accessories, but even so, they're not worth that much more in my eyes. And this is it's a unique mould. It's got its own engineering, pretty clever engineering. It's a really enjoyable, clever transformation. It looks fantastic in both modes, which is something that can't be said of MP44. I think this destroys MP44 in terms of its truck mode, and it's not a million miles behind in bot mode either. As I say, it's not as rounded, it's not as, you know, proportions aren't as heroic, but it's a bloody good interpretation of the character, and it's actually a lot cleaner from some angles. Well, from most angles, it's a lot cleaner, it has to be said, especially from the back, and the side profile's really great as well. Again, I've done a fairly lengthy video on this one, so I won't go on for too long, but you know, I'm really excited to see what Transform Element can do this year. I know they've got a Mirage on the horizon. I liked this one so much, I bought the Nemesis repaint of it, the B version, which is something I won't be doing for the official MP44B, because that's still 180 something pounds, which is double the price of this, you know, without the trailer. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, you may disagree with me on account of it not being, you know, as articulated and quite as sexy looking as painted. You know, it's not painted obviously to the extent that MP44 is, but I think in terms of bang for the buck, this represents the best value figure that I've had this year, with a really, you know, an actually enjoyable transformation. Complicated, yes, but not frustrating. You know, I'm not the best at transforming figures, and I find it fairly easy and intuitive and fun. And yeah, that's why it makes my my top spot for the year. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed listening to my ramblings on my my most disappointing and my favourite figures of the year. And as I said in the intro, if you'd like to comment below and drop me a list of yours, it would be interesting to see what everyone thinks. And again, I'll just take this opportunity to thank everyone for looking at the channel this year, and to those of you who've subscribed, and I hope to see you in 2020 with more reviews. Until then, have a great new year everyone, and take care.